Okay, so we'll do some introductions here. My name is Richard Tanabe. I'm the NADP site liaison. If you've called the 1-800 number, you've probably talked to me. If you've sent an email, I probably responded to you. Also with us today is Amy Mager, who's the sample and data processing manager. So she's with the CAL, and her staff are the ones that send out, receive the samples, send out the sampling supplies for AMON, MDN, and the CAL. Who else? Bob Larson's with us. He's with the program office. He's the data and website information manager. Wyatt Sherlock's with us. He's a new hire to the program office. He's an instrumentation specialist. He previously worked at the University of Illinois with the NADP program. He was an operator for Illinois 11, Bonneville. As well, he did special studies, including continuous ammonia monitoring, and I can't remember what I was Wyatt. So if you want to jump in.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's good. Pretty much ammonia monitoring and some other special studies, but yeah, thank you, Richard.
Also on the call today is Tim Chirac from EPA, and he's been part of the this training kind of arose out of his investigation into citing criteria for NADP. So again, if questions come up that we can't answer, Tim will have an answer for us. So not to put you on the spot. Okay, so we're up to 42 participants. Let me share my screen. Let me find my screen. Okay, are you seeing my full screen presentation?
Yep, we see that, Richard.
Okay, good. All right, well, welcome everybody, and sorry about the mix-up on that invitation, the link. Not sure how that happened, but it's all on me. So this is a third of our virtual training sessions. Basically, it started last year with the fall meeting. We indicated we would start taking advantage of everyone being kind of working from home and familiarizing themselves with the online Zoom, Teams, WebEx platforms, and start offering training for the operators. So this one is our third one. It's basically, is your site impacting the data? So an overview of what impacts the data. So I'll give some background as well as some citing criteria. There's mainly three things: citing criteria, equipment operation and maintenance or lack of, and then sample handling. I'm going to focus today on number one and number two. Sample handling, we have talked about in previous ones, and possibly the next training session will be on bag sampling, but it depends on, haven't quite decided that yet. But yeah, those are more individual network issues. The first two kind of are site related. And then to end, we'll introduce a tool we've created. Basically, it's a virtual site survey. So a little bit of background. Due to decreasing budgets, the external site QA site surveys that EEMS has been doing has been reduced. They used to come out to sites about every 3 years. We're now down to every 4 years for them to come out and assess siting criteria, the equipment, and operator performance. Over the past year, they've still been going out, even through the pandemic. Oftentimes, they've kind of arranged their schedule when the operators weren't there, so they were not able to watch the operators do their changes due to the pandemic. But they were able to still assess siting criteria and check the equipment and make any tweaks necessary. So their main, when they're there, they're looking at things like, are the trees too close to the collectors? Are there objects too close to the rain gauge or other collectors? Are they following the SOPs? And is site maintenance being done on a regular basis? So because that site visits are becoming further apart, it became something the NADP program office was, how do we keep the sites engaged and aware of their sites? So, you get an email saying EMS is coming to visit your site and do a site survey. It's like, well, it's a good reminder for operators to, one, they can, when EMS is there, they can, they can learn from them. They're also made aware of any issues at their sites. But if they're not there for 4 years, that becomes a problem. So through the Quality Assurance Advisory Group, Citing Criteria Work Group, which Tim Chirac leads, we made a presentation to them before the spring meeting. And how do we focus on items that, or the decision was to focus on items that are directly or could directly impact the sample quality rating. And less so on items that don't really change as frequently. So, a lot of our sites, we have some sites, that are close to 43 years old. When the sites were put in, the trees were, maybe knee high, but now 42 years later, those trees are becoming, issues for citing criteria violations. But, depending on where that is, it's pretty hard to get a 40-year-old tree cut down. So we're trying to focus on things that, are easier to, and make operators, they have more control over. So there's two parts to this. One is this training session, and then, as I mentioned, the virtual site survey will be the second part. So what is citing criteria? Citing criteria, it's criteria that's established to meet the goal of having regionally representative measurements and comparability between all of our network sites. So if we can set out some criteria that each site has to meet, it's easier for us to compare between the sites. We have two categories. One are rules. So those were criteria that are supported by scientific practices that ensure uniform data quality and provide a framework for site selection. So not only today, as we continue to sample at our sites, when a new site is chosen, the citing criteria rules are examined, and we try and make this new sites, meet those rules as close as they can. The second category is guidelines. So these criteria are recommendations based on scientific judgment. And yeah, not all citing considerations are possible to meet. So, and both the rules and the guidelines are defined for both installation of the equipment and for continued operation of the site. So when the site starts and every year thereafter. So NADP has some citing criteria, and this is kind of a diagram. It's available on the website. I'll make the links available when I send out the once the video is available, the recording's available, I'll add the links. But it ranges from, a lot of it's focused on, distance from the collectors, distance from equipment, so the rain gauge, the collectors, and then as well as kind of the 20 kilometers, greater than anything, things that should be greater than 20 kilometers. So, in industry, things like that. And those are guidelines. Anything in blue is a guideline. Anything in red is a rule. So there's, the 45-degree rule for trees, towers, poles, stuff like that. There's a 30-degree rule, and I'll kind of explain these in the next couple of slides. Buildings, and then distances between the collector and the rain gauge. There's a minimum and a maximum distance those should be, as well as there's a, between the opening of your bucket and the opening of your rain gauge can only be roughly 12 inches difference. So these are some of the things, we talk about: herbicide use, fertilizer use, roads, vehicle traffic, objects within a certain distance, usually 5 meters. And then this one's something new in the last 5-7 years. We had a site that was located close to a golf course, and it became the irrigation source for the golf course, I think, or maybe it was just a plant area, but it was in potential spray from the sprinkler system was potentially getting into the buckets. So this is for wet deposition for both NTN and MDN. As well, we have criteria for our ammonia monitoring network. And again, similar criteria, distances from the actual sampler. We have the 45-degree rules, the fertilizer use, stuff like that. And then kind of what kind of activity is close to or greater than 100 meters or should be greater than 100 meters. And then feedlots for animals operations are also part of the citing criteria. So what are the major violations? So in 2019, from EEMS's, they visited whatever number of sites, I don't have that offhand, but the top 3 categories where there were violations in citing criteria were either, there were objects that were greater than a meter tall were within the 5 meters, so 45%. So the bottom left photo is a photo of an example of that. And all of our photos in here are mainly from EEMS. If you recognize your site, we're not calling you out. It's just, this is for learning purposes. So, and I'm not using any site names. But here's your NTN collector, and there's this electrical, some sort of electrical probably box that is within the 5 meters, and it's greater than 1 meter tall. So, that's the violation. Here's some vegetation greater than 0.6 meters tall and within the 5 meters. And you can see the rain gauge over here and the NTN on this side. The citing criteria for objects greater than a meter, no vegetation, they apply to both the rain gauge and the collector, whether it's MDN or NTN. And then the other one was the Dryside bucket. Is it clean? So here's an example of a bucket that is not clean, and we'll see some more examples later on. So the 45-degree rule and the 30-degree guideline, sometimes it's hard to kind of understand exactly what that is. It pertains to trees, power poles, flag poles, light poles, towers, so like Met towers or any other instrument towers, and then buildings. And it applies both to the collector and the rain gauge. And so one way to think about it, so this is the 45 degree. Let me just do my, nope, which one is it? No, I can't find it. Oh, Deja. Okay. Is to think about, so H is the height of the tree that we're looking at, and 45 degree, it has to be, H distance away from the collector. So if you think about, if you were to cut that tree down and it fell, would it hit your collector? If it does, then it doesn't meet the 45 degree rule. As well, the 30 degree is 2H. So if you cut that same tree down and it falls and it goes twice as far as your collector, then it doesn't meet the citing criteria. So that's one way to look at it. So here's an example. Collector, there's a tree. Tree is H high. If we were to knock that down, tree would end up kind of over here. This is kind of the 45 degree cone. And, if you can imagine this cone starting from where the bucket inlet is, the tree would show up in that cone, and therefore it doesn't meet the 45 degree rule. So I don't know if that helps at all. It's without having we almost need a video, and we are starting to get some videos from EEMS. They have a drone that they use for sites. And so I think if we can kind of utilize that and get a better learning tool, short video for demonstration purposes, I think that would help. Is there any questions on 45 or 30 degree before I move on? Okay, I'm going to keep going. So other types of obstructions. So other than trees, we talked about Met towers. And so some of these, this is a cast net site. There's our rain gauge, there's our collector. Sometimes we don't have the ability to move Met towers. And so that's why when I kind of mentioned, let's focus on the things the operators do have some control on. And then there's the AMON shelter. For this one on the left, there's a light standard, I think, almost directly over top of the MDN collector. There's a power pole here. So, again, sometimes where the equipment was placed, there might have been very little choice. So, but those are other types of obstructions. When we talk about vegetation within 5 meters, so the one on the left, there's, within the 5 meters, and it's over a meter in some cases. Here's another site where, they're actually cleaning up the site to get rid of the vegetation kind of within the 5 meter range. So there's an example where, that's something that you as a site operator, site supervisor, or operating agency, that's something you do have control over. And so we can easily correct that type of citing criteria violation. As far as the Aerocam Dryside buckets, here's some examples of, poor condition Dryside buckets. With the broken lids, they're dirty. When the collector is activated, the lid pad seal, this is what it comes to rest on. Now, with the change from bucket sampling to bag sampling, you don't have a readily available supply of Dryside buckets, whereas before you could just take one of the old buckets or used buckets and replace it. If you need dry side buckets, please contact us because we have a lot and we will send you a couple to just hold on, keep on site. And you can, I've had some operators who we've sent, and basically what they do is they put one out for a month. The next month they put the other one out, and then they clean the first one, and they just kind of rotate them back and forth. So by all means, reach out to us and we will ship you some extra dry side buckets. Some more dry side for the Aerocam. Again, here's the lid seal on it. So with it broken and jagged, it leads to potentially, tearing the lid seal pad covering, and then we would have some contamination from the foam in there. Here's an MDN dry side bucket with the bag. Again, we will replace those. For the NTN collectors, this is a splash guard. So when the lid comes over, it rests over top of this guard. And, if it's looking like this, there's a good chance that, there could be some potential contamination. The other thing to check if you have an NCON when you change your lid pad is the brackets that hold the lid pad seal in tend to get gunked up with either insects or debris. And so you should also check that as well. And if there is some, just either blow it out or scrape it out. Collector weekly cleaning. If yours is looking like this, we should be cleaning it on a weekly basis with paper towels, distilled or deionized water. Let's not let it get to the condition on the right, because that will likely impact your data quality. Lid pad seal conditions. Again, if yours is looking like this, let us know. Circle it on your field form, and we will ship you out a replacement that you can put in its place. And then you ship us back the old one. We'll refurbish it and then send it out to another site. So again, we should be cleaning these on a weekly basis. Lid pad seals, plastic versus Teflon. So some of the sites we have that are older just have a plastic covering, which is more susceptible to breaking down over time with the UV and wear. We now ship them out using Teflon wrap, so they are more durable and they will not flake and break apart. They will weather with UV. If you're running one of the PFAS sites, you're still being sent plastic cover ones for now. But we have been supplying you with new ones. So again, if yours is being compromised in any way, let us know. We'll ship you a new one. So the lid pad seals, and a lot of what EEMS is seeing out there are related to the lid pad seals. And these should be cleaned every week using a non-print paper towel with either deionized or distilled water, and basically cleaning it. You should be doing a visual check for rips, tears, the overall condition, and you should be changing it once a year. So notify the labs by indicating it on your field form or call the 1-800 number. Up until I'm thinking 5 or 6 years ago, the Cal used to ship out, and the HAL used to ship out a new lid pad every year. And then once they went to the Teflon, they decided to kind of do it on an as needed basis. But from what we can tell now, when we do get lid pads back, a lot of them were installed in 2015. So If you've never changed your lid pad and you look at it and it's got a fairly good dent from the bucket, we should be changing it. So just, again, indicate it on your field form, give us a call, and we'll ship one out to you to be replaced. You ship it out, we ship it out, you replace it, ship it back, we'll rebuild them. So again, with on the NCONs particularly, we've been having some, over time, we do get some gaps, and this is one of the things that EMS will check. And essentially what they'll do is they'll just give a slight push on the lid with their finger. And if it can, raise up and show a gap, then they'll adjust it. If you're seeing that, next time you're there, just take your finger and kind of give it a push. And if you're seeing a significant gap, then let us know. We'll send you some instructions on how to adjust your lid so that you get a tighter seal. Okay. The other thing that we're going to focus on with the virtual survey are new activities within 100 meters, 500 meters, 20 kilometers of your site. So report any changes that are new, or even if it's been there for a while, you can still report it. So stuff like local construction, if there's animal feedlots, new roads, new industry, anything like that, then you can record that on when we send you the virtual survey. So that brings us to the virtual survey. So basically, we thought it'd be ideal if this can be done from your phone. So if you have cell service available and data, it's basically a website. You've probably filled out something similar for NTN supplies, MDN cooler supplies. What else? Operator contact information. We've sent them out via the survey software. So you can either complete it from a web browser on a computer or your phone. If you don't have internet at the site, you can do we'll provide an option for a hard copy printout, which you can then complete later. And the frequency we haven't quite figured out yet. We'll see how our response is to this initial one, and then we'll go from there. So this will be the focus. We'll look at site photos, just the 4 cardinal directions. We'll look at equipment. So again, the lid pad seals, the Dryside buckets, the collectors, vegetation around the collectors, and then again, I mentioned the new activities. The good thing about this is we can provide, so this is an example, we can provide the photo we want you to take as an example. And then they basically here, you can, if you're on your phone, you could tap on there and it will ask you, do you want to go to your camera? And if you go to say yes, you take your picture and it will save it to the survey through there. And you can select the size of the photo, quality. So if you're low on data, if that's a concern, we can do a lower quality. But again, so this is the lid pad seal between the funnel and the lid. So again, you tap this and it will allow you to take a picture and upload it. For site photos, these are kind of examples of what we would be asking for. Again, just stand X feet away from your collector and then just take the photo. We realize you're not going to have nice little directional boxes, but as long as you either kind of take them in we'll kind of outline the order to take them. So like north, east, west, south, and then that way we'll be able to keep track of them. So like I say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. With the right photo, we can learn a lot about the site conditions. So again, we'll provide examples of what we want. And this won't be the example, but this isn't what we want to see when you send it back. So what about AMON? We have been working on essentially it's an annual checklist for AMON, and this will come to you as a fillable PDF. And so you'll be able to just fill it out and then just send it back to us. And essentially it's looking at a lot of the citing criteria and whether there's been any change in since the last time. So, if to your best of your knowledge, if it's, within the last, 6 months or a year, if it was already there, then it's existing. If in the last year something's changed, or if it's new, you would put a C or an N, or something was removed. There's sections for notes. So it's about a 2-page PDF like this. And then there's a section for operator information. So that's pretty much it for the citing criteria, the virtual survey. The rest of this is kind of just housekeeping stuff before we get to the question and answers. So there's been a lot of questions being raised by sites about herbicides and pesticide use. Based on citing criteria, we shouldn't be using herbicide within 20 meters of the collector. So this is a rain gauge, which is, probably 5 meters from a collector. And, it's obvious there's been some herbicide use there, but so let's avoid that. For pesticide use, again, based on operator safety, if you got a nest of wasps or fire ants or whatever, by your rain gauge, by your collectors, by all means, the use of pesticides to get rid of them is acceptable. And then there's just some guidelines, avoid doing it when the collector's open or the AMON sample is deployed. Try and do it during low wind speeds. Cover the collectors if you do use the pesticides. So either a plastic bag or just make sure it's covered. And then record the dates and times on the field forms when you submit your samples. So again, for troubleshooting, any support, toll-free number, 1-800-952-7353. There's the 3 network emails, send it there. And if you go to the website, there is an operator section on SOPs and some short training video, stuff like that. Okay. The next training session, and I'll make sure the link is correct, will be in September. So we figured August would probably be with people doing holidays and stuff. We'll skip that and we'll move to September. It'll be the 4th one. And again, if you have suggestions for training, by all means, send them our way. I know there's been a couple of requests for the NTN bag sampling, additional training. So this is a plug for the Education and Outreach Subcommittee. So we've been really trying to keep up to date with our social media platforms, so mainly Twitter and Facebook. If you have pictures or ideas, send them to there. You can tag on Twitter or the Facebook account, and use the hashtag NADP. There is a contest that just started, and it's going to run through to the end of August, and they call it the Visitors to the Site. So if you have interesting photos of either critters, animals, or people to your site, send the pictures or post it on Twitter or Facebook and tag us. And if you're gonna do it through Twitter or Facebook, use NADP hashtag or hashtag Science Explorer. And then any submissions that come in, we would consider for the 2022 calendar. And that's it. So we can go to any questions. Let me stop sharing. Any questions?
Hello, I'm Tracy from the New Mexico Air Quality Bureau, and I'm an operator at one of the passive ammonia not dry sites. And I was wondering about on the form, it asks us if there's been any fire activity nearby, and I'm wondering if you guys want to know about regional smoke in the area or just nearby fires. Because we have a lot of regional fires in the New Mexico, southern Colorado area.
So can you smell it at your site?
Yes, and you can see it at the site.
And I would record it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will do. Thank you.
And on the AMON form, at the spring meeting, there was a decision made that we were going to phase out the meteorological section and the phenology. So the leaves on the trees section. I believe that's correct, right, Amy? Those two sections?
That is correct.
Okay. So we're just going to use up the forms that we have. So at some point you will see new forms. We will send out an email to the listserv just to make people aware of it. So.
Thank you very much.
Okay, there's a comment in the chat from Andrea. Who's the best person to discuss specific siting questions with regard to an Aerocam NCON co-location study? We can talk offline about that, Andrea, either through myself and possibly Greg Weatherby from USGS, who's done quite a few intercomparisons between the two. So. Anybody else have anything? And it doesn't have to be about what we talked about today. It could be anything regarding your sites or sampling or.
Richard, I was just wondering if I could take an opportunity to make a comment.
Sure.
I just wanted to let everyone know that it's really important to fill out your field forms completely. And this comes into play a lot, say if you have a dry sample and the section on sample conditions and contamination. And I understand it. You think I don't have any sample. Of course, there's nothing in it. But with the way our system is set up, any piece of information that's missing is going to throw a missing code, and that is going to, in most cases, automatically bump your sample down to a QR of B, which is still a valid sample. It just means that there's some flags on it. But the more complete everything is filled out, then that's just more of a chance that your sample will get the highest quality rating that it can get during review. So even if it's a dry sample, still fill out your weights and still fill out those contamination questions. Just answer no to them, which is most likely going to be the case. Same thing with site operations, fill those in with a yes or a no. I understand there's some cases where for the equipment, it may truly be unknown, and that's fine. But yeah, just making sure you fill in those sections is very important. That's it. I don't know if anyone has any questions about that. Feel free to ask.
Okay, there's not that many. Is there any questions about the NTN and the bag sampling and the change from, we're now almost 8 months in, 6, 7, yeah, almost 8 months. Many of the sites have received probably at least 3 supply boxes. So that's 27 weeks. Any questions about either the supply, the process of getting your new supplies? So we have been trying to be proactive about sending out the boxes for your next set of supplies. But occasionally, we do get emails or phone calls from operators saying, I only have 1 left. And then we've been able to get a supply out to them. So again, any questions on that or the lids? From what I've been hearing with the summer, the warmer temperatures, the lids are easier to get on and off now than they were in the winter when we started. I'm going to take this as everything's going great with bag sampling. And okay, now we got some questions. Okay, so when is the best time to send back lids? I seem to be out of sync with supply shipments. So our original plan was we put in that poly mailer, and the plan was when you had 7 used lids to send them back to us. And then the goal was that was kind of the backup trigger that, okay, we already have it planned when we were going to send you your next supply. And then that was just, more of a backup if, we get a poly mailer full of lids and we haven't sent out supplies, then we would. As far as the supplies, we sent out a survey for inventory last week. We've gotten about 80 responses to date, so about a third of our sites. And that will probably be something we'll do moving forward, is kind of 2 weeks out from when we're going to ship. Those sites that we're going to ship to, we're going to target with the inventory survey, just so we have an up to date. So, once every 7 weeks, somewhere around there, we would be sending you an email requesting an inventory update. Anything to add on that, Amy?
Yeah, I was just going to say that in relation to that survey and finding out what you have on site, we're then going to adjust what we're including in your box so that we sort of get folks back on track into this. We're sending you 9 weeks of supplies, and then we have it mapped out that when 7 weeks go by, you're on our schedule to send you a new box. But we know that some people have gotten out of sync, or people didn't start exactly when we thought they did. So anyway, what we're going to be shooting to do over the next few months is getting everyone sort of back into that 9-week rotation. So the boxes you receive over the next few months may be adjusted somewhat in the inventory that they contain to work with what you already have on site. And then after that, hopefully the boxes will get more into a normal containing a more standard set of supplies. Yeah.
And that kind of covers the next comment. We had a bunch, approximately 20 of unused sample bottles that they just sent back in a box. So thank you for that. And that's kind of what we're going to try and avoid down the road. where you
Right.
have this excess of bottles and boxes because either dry weeks or something like that.
I guess can
yep.
I add one more thing quick, Richard? Thanks. I would also stress that even though, like we just said, we have you on the schedule, we know when you're going to need your next box. It's still really important to return the dirty lids to us. When you have 7 dirty lids, stick those in that poly mailer and send it back to us. It's important so that we are keeping enough lids in rotation. You know, we're always bringing new supply in, of course, to supplement, but things are actually getting really tight with supplies of stuff, especially things made of plastic. There's, due to the pandemic, there's been a shortage of raw materials and just operations at a lot of these facilities. So we're running into a little bit of supply issues. So the more you can remember to return your dirty lids to us, the better. So thank you for that.
Okay, moving on to comments. Any updates on the bucket plugs with the one-way valves? I believe we did. We purchased one and we tried it, and I don't think it worked. Is that correct, Amy?
Yeah, Mark would be able to speak to it better. Mark Olson, he's not here this week, but yeah, I think he did try it, and it wasn't working because he wasn't able to get a tight enough seal around the top in order for that one-way valve to work. So I think that's where it stands right now. I know he's got a bucket set up with one and he can play around with it some more, but Andrea, I can double check with Mark and see where it's at, and we can get back to you on that.
Okay. From Bob at CO96, tying into QA/QC ratings and wildfire events. From the spring meeting, I understood there was a range of values for samples, cations, etc., and mercury. Are samples that are experiencing drastic weather or fire events that are not within those values given a C rating and not included in the trends mapping? Do you have an answer on that, Amy or Bob?
I'm just not sure what he means by the not within those values. But what I can tell you, Bob, is that if a sample is contains contamination of some sort, so the you know, those questions that you answer about bird droppings, cloudy, discolored, if there's a yes answer to any of those questions and the analytical values for that sample come back higher than historical values, then that sample will get a C rating for, it will get a grossly contaminated rating, which will then result in a QR of C, an invalid sample, which will then will not be included in the trends mapping.
Not sure if that answers your question, Bob, but we can investigate further offline.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, because it won't be included in the long term, but it's an event that's causing the contamination. That's a natural event that should be included in the annual results. You know, we've had a lot of wildfires in our area, as is Tracy in New Mexico, that maybe aren't contaminating the sample visually, but we are seeing increases in mercury that aren't within the historic values, but they're not being included. even though it's a natural occurring thing. And to throw out a whole year of studies based on significant events like that doesn't seem right.
This is Bob Larson. It's a good question, actually, Bob. Thank you for bringing it up. We don't, when we look at contaminated samples that are outliers, we don't necessarily look at what the source of the contamination was, if it was a natural or an unnatural event. But for fires, I think this may be something we should consider. And to a second point, that had to deal with NTN. MDN, we don't necessarily throw them out because of high concentrations, or at least it's less common to do so. In fact, I just earlier today checked, and out of the 90,000 wet valid MDN samples, we've only invalidated 63 because of contamination. So just because it's a high concentration doesn't mean we would necessarily throw it out. We'd have to look at some reason, that there's exposed to dry exposure or something else, or a long sample that would cause it to be invalidated. And yeah, and also then just one sample isn't necessarily going to mean that the site won't make the map for the whole year. We actually look at it's approximately 75% valid samples is what we're looking for as a minimum.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, continuing on through the chat. How many coolers should we have on site? At a minimum, you should have 3 coolers, depending on where your site's located. You may have 4 or 5. Typically, you should have, one should be at the lab, one's on this collector. And I think we're at 4 now, right, Amy? Collect MDN coolers?
Coolers in rotation?
Yeah.
It's 3 for most sites.
3 for most, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you find you're always kind of waiting on Monday afternoon for UPS to show up for the cooler for Tuesday, then let us know, and we can add another one to the rotation. Request from our lab staff, if you want to send information in, try to avoid putting it in the poly mailer, like a piece of paper, because that doesn't always get seen. So we should either send an email or give us a call. A number of sites have indicated the O-rings are failing they were used to hold the excess strap on the buckets. And yeah, I've heard from other site operators, so we are looking into an alternative solution for that. And that's, so far, that's all that's in the chat, and we're almost at an hour. So does anyone else have anything else to add or for this one? Oh, I got one more. Back to the coolers. I think we have a few extra A to E from slow mailing. Yeah, if you're running short on space, definitely you can ship one of those coolers back to us, and we'll take it out of rotation. Just put a note inside the cooler that to take it out of rotation, basically. So, thanks for that. All right. Any other questions? So a reminder, if you have critters, that's not anything that comes to your site, share it with us. And we haven't quite figured out what the prize is going to be, but it'll be something with the NADP logo on it. So But if there's nothing else, then thank you for your time today. Appreciate everyone taking time out to join us, and hopefully you learned something new. And again, if you have any questions, by all means, give me a call, send me an email. Once we get the recording sorted out, I will send out email with the link to it. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.